I know for me as a coach and as a therapist, it's hard when people resist the acceptance. And when we don't do that, life is harder. Everything, as I said, becomes a crisis. Every pound, every mood swing, every skipped workout equals failure. And we're not just talking about weight loss here, everything. Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, the podcast where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, which includes your relationship with your body, food, self-worth, and the behaviors that align with all of those. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. At the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, we believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's have a conversation about that. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to miss any content that's being dropped, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I also want to know who are the people you want to hear from on this show and what topics would you like me to continue to cover. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk about a concept that I don't think a lot of people talk about in regards to mental health. And really it's really a power move when it comes to anything that you want to change in your life. And this is the concept of radical acceptance. Thank you to my client, Kelly. She always gives me ideas on what to speak about. So thank you, Kelly. And radical acceptance is something that I learned about in the Dialectical Behavioral Therapy model of therapy, obviously. And it's this idea of really honing in on what is. And I'm going to talk about what it is. I'm going to talk about what it's not, more importantly, and then give you steps in this podcast episode on how to begin to act in a way that's radically accepting what's going on in your life. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. But beforehand, I'm going to banter a little bit, talk about my life, reality TV, true crime, my dogs, whatever that is. So if you do not want to hear any of that, please check out the show notes below to move on to our subject of the day. Hey, I don't know when this is going to actually be posted, but it's probably going to sound like I'm so behind, but Karen Reed is not guilty. Oh my gosh. Can I just tell you how much I love my husband? Like, he runs out here. He's like, there's a verdict, because I've just been so infatuated. I told you guys I watch her on YouTube. Annie Elise at Serial Listly. Shout out to her. She gives great overviews. She had a gal in the courtroom, and I just got the entire overview of what was going on every Friday. And I'm just so happy for this woman, Karen Reed. If you'd like to come on this show and talk about your mental health, I'd love to have you. And just the holes in the actual investigation is nuts. As someone who has worked in child crimes with the Phoenix Police Department, who has testified against people, like, I, as a therapist, would get so much anxiety when I'd have to testify because I was so afraid that I wasn't going to be able to say the right thing when I was telling the truth, And like, for these people to go up there and like blatantly lie, like, you could, like, oh, I didn't realize that I called that man 9 times in 20 minutes. I must have butt dialed him 9 times, but it never went to voicemail. That's odd. For people to throw away their phones on military bases and cut the SIM card and be like, yeah, that's just what I do every time I get rid of my phone. To have bite marks and scratch marks from a dog and that dog be rehomed shortly after that, then also have your basement redone for the second time, even though it was just done like a year or so beforehand, and then sell that house. Like, it's crazy. If the feds are listening, if you are, I'm not sure you would be. Can we please, justice for John O'Keefe, figure this out? Because I don't care what anyone says, she was found not guilty by her peers. And they blatantly said, I've listened to all the jurors afterwards, they've said the taillight evidence did not match. It did not match. You saw in one video her taillight being like red, and then afterwards, once the Canton PD got a hold of her car, it was not there. and it just didn't match with the video footage. There's so many holes in this investigation, on top of having the lead investigator be completely biased, talking about the potential alleged suspect. Again, as someone who's worked very closely in investigations, you don't do that, right? You don't do that. Now, could we say that guy's a piece of shit because we have evidence that he's a piece of shit? Yes. However, they didn't have the evidence, because if they did, they should have probably presented it to the court, and they did not. So for him to have that bias and not necessarily have the evidence to back up that bias is a little crazy. So shout out to Karen Reed. You go, girl. And I also want to talk about something. People say, oh, she's not likable. Who fucking cares? I don't want, because someone's not likable, we're going to say, oh, they're guilty because they're not likable. Like, that's prejudice, right? And just the whole thing is insane. I know for me, even with my Hathaway husband, if we had someone dead on our lawn, they'd probably come inside and investigate us, right? And juror number one said that for himself, an African American man, he'd be like, please, you act like the cops wouldn't come in my house. Of course they would. That just shows the privilege of being a police officer in that community, that you almost feel like you're above the law. I have worked, again, very closely with the police department. I have friends who are can I say this? I have friends in the FBI. I have friends who are in very high level positions in regards to defense, and I love all of them. However, they're very good people. They have integrity. They do their job as well. These folks did not. So I'm so anxious to see what happens. I guess Brian Higgins lawyered up pretty quickly after the trial. Maybe I have that wrong, because your girl gets her information on TikTok. So let me tell you, let's talk about TikTok, you guys. I've really slept on TikTok for a long time. I really enjoy it. It's so nice. It's almost like brainwashing. I'm not going to lie. So if you're having a bad day and you want to watch military homecomings or puppies getting adopted or getting out of foster care, their algorithm's so good that you'll start seeing that pretty much right away. Whereas Instagram, it's like, who knows who's seeing what, right? TikTok, man, my feed is Karen Reed, Love Island, and a little bit of the politics side of things. But I started just unfollowing that too, because I can't right now, and I need to remind myself that I can't, because all I'm doing is putting myself into a doom scrolling spiral when I do that. And that's what I want to see. I want to see everyone mad that Jeremiah got sent home, because that was absolute bullshit. Hopefully, again, you're going to hear this a couple weeks after the fact. So if you're not up to date, sorry for that. It's insane to me that Jeremiah got sent home. He was the hottest guy on Love Island. And I truly believe that he was put in a position that was bullied by a girl, then bullied by the guys, and he really was not treated fairly. So my hopes is, as I'm talking about this now, that he's actually come back and was in Casa Amor. If you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, watch Love Island. It's a great way to just disconnect. I truly found myself excited. I'd watch the first look. I'd look on TikTok. But now that he got sent home and the politics going on, I'm probably not going to watch anymore. So you may or may not have Love Island updates. Other than that, everything's been pretty good over here. I am so excited about the mindset of menopause. It is just coming together so beautifully. And I had mentioned this on my stories. The amount of time and attention we put into creating this program is insane. It's so well put together. It has really a plethora of information. I almost feel like it should be 6 months instead of 4 months. And I'm excited. So if you are interested in joining our first cohort of the Mindset of Menopause, check out the show notes below. We only are going to have 20 people in the cohort. So if you want to sign up now. I cannot tell you the importance of focusing on your mental health as well as your physical health, and the fact that there is really no other comprehensive program like this out there. So if you are struggling, or maybe maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know you're in perimenopause. I had a girl on TikTok say, all my doctors keep telling me I'm too young. I said, absolutely not. She's 39. I said, the onset of menopause is anywhere from 45 to 55, and perimenopause can be 7 to 10 years before that. So we are not too young. We are having symptoms. Let's look at those symptoms and let's figure out how to manage those from a physiological, a psychological, and then, of course, a pharmacological type of strategy. So, all right, speaking of that, today we're talking about radical acceptance. And a lot of people come into my program thinking that weight gain is their problem, but it's really the war they're waging on their bodies and against their bodies that really is the issue. And so radical acceptance is really the refusal to resist your reality. And a lot of people resist how they've gotten to a certain place or resist why they are stuck in the same place. And they look for excuses outside of themselves. They try to not accept that this is what it is and this is why it is. Oftentimes, that could create this turmoil internally, and you start to, why me? Why me? When we know why me. So, I'm going to have a little hard conversation with you today. And today we're going to talk about like, what does radical acceptance mean? What does life look like when we don't have radical acceptance? And then again, step-by-step guide to build on your body, your emotions, and your identity as they change in regards to someone who is radically accepting. So what is radical acceptance? Radical acceptance is a psychological and somatic, so like feeling your body practice that invites you to acknowledge reality exactly as it is. Not as we wish it to be, not how it used to be, now how it should be, what it is, right? It means seeing clearly without denial or restriction. And in health and wellness, this might look like acknowledging weight gain without calling yourself a failure or putting any moral description to yourself, without thinking you can never see weight loss because you've gained the weight. It's letting go of this notion that I need to have my pre-baby body back. Or a lot of times women will say, well, when I was this weight, I felt amazing, as if the weight on the scale was the reason why they felt amazing. And it's meeting your emotions, especially those emotions that you oftentimes neglect or try to, not pay attention to, don't feel comfortable with. And it's listening to your body. And your body is going to respond to your actions or lack thereof, and then tell you the story of the past 3, 6, 9 months, 12 months, 5 years. It will tell you the story. You're the author of that story. But oftentimes you're trying to find a ghostwriter to say, no, that's not my reality. I didn't write that. This ghostwriter wrote. No, you wrote it. And now you've got to read it. So that's what we're talking about today. Okay, so let's talk about radical acceptance. I think of it as the bridge between like self-awareness, which we talk a lot on this podcast about, and self-compassion, right? And it's shifting between this, like, it's of course a nervous system regulation skill, because when we can accept something and not put this like moral failure on it, then we're probably going to feel a lot better about it. And it also is this present mindfulness skill of not chasing this unrealistic ideal, unrealistic reality, and starting to care for our current reality right now. Because when we're chasing this fantasy, what we're not doing is focusing on what we can do right now. And this concept, once my clients get it, it is a game changer. And it's funny because I used to teach dialectical behavioral therapy in my eating disorder groups with my kiddos. And I say kiddos, they were young adults. They're like, I'm 23, Christina. Anyway, and you just forget concepts, but you teach them in a way that doesn't say this is radical acceptance. And then when my client Kelly said that, I was like, oh shit, I've been doing this forever, but let's put a name on it, because I think sometimes you can say, oh, I radically accepted that, right? So examples of this in our practice for clients who are in perimenopause is accepting something as important, but also kind of silly as a hot flash, right? You accept that the hot flash is happening at the time that you're in that interview, or you're speaking at an engagement, or you're in the middle of a presentation, accepting, boom, a hot flash has entered my body. You know what drives my clients absolutely crazy is they're eating clean and doing all the workouts, but they don't see the weight budge. Their sleep is all over the place. Their hormones are through the roof, and they feel like they're going crazy.
Yeah, it's frustrating because 9 out of 10 times it's something hormone related that no one's looking at. It's perimenopause, menopause. Our biology internally has shifted, but no one's changing the strategy as far as approach.
What if perimenopause support included like therapeutic guidance, nutrition, exercise, and hormonal support all in one place?
Seriously, it would be great if you didn't have to track down like 10 different experts just to feel like yourself again.
That's why I created the Mindset of Menopause and have partnered with Dr. Jordan Trapp to create a comprehensive plan to your hormonal health.
Together, we are making medical insight meet emotional strategy. So your symptoms make sense, your plan actually works, and your power comes back online.
This isn't just support. This is your comeback season.
Click below for more information.
And not saying, oh my God, I have to fix this. They're going to all see this. Everyone's looking at me. They see me sweating. That's not accepting it. If we could just say, a hot flash has entered my body. I'm going to be okay. I will ask for my needs to be met. You could say, hey, just need a second. Need to grab some water. Can we turn down the AC? Maybe take off, like if you have like a jacket on, take off your jacket, ask for a break, whatever that looks like. And maybe that's not available to you. However, just saying, okay, this hot flash is here. That's it. But we do the opposite, right? And we'll talk about that. Another one is for a lot of my clients, they're just high achieving, high performing type A ladies. And radical acceptance is beginning to validate her emotional exhaustion instead of hiding it, instead of pushing through it, really recognizing like, I am exhausted. I did this a couple weeks ago. I just felt off. I felt tired. I felt off. Last Friday, actually, I was exhausted. Fridays, I told my husband that they seem to be where my emotional battery is dead. I took a 5-hour nap. Is that even considered a nap? I slept for 5 hours. Maybe it was 4 hours. I was out and it felt really good. And I just accepted that. Were there things that needed to be done? Absolutely. However, I was so exhausted in my head that me trying to do those things would require me more effort and more, I have to put more time into doing them rather than recharging like I did. Another one is choosing to adjust your goals, not because you're giving up or because you can't do it, but because the goal or the habit isn't aligning with your actual capacity. This is a big one that we do in the Mindset of Matter coaching is we look at the reality. And I say this to clients a lot. They'll be like, oh, it's just been a crazy week. And I don't know how many times I have to say this a week. I say, every week's a crazy week for you. And you need to accept that and realize that because of the craziness in your week, your habits that you want to do are not the habits that you can do. And you've proven that by not being able to do these habits consistently. And it's hard for a lot of clients because it does mean that their weight loss journey, if they're on a weight loss journey, is going to take longer. So guess what? We accept that too. We accept the reality that I have a stressful career. I have stressors because of my children, a family member may be ill, because I am working 2 jobs, because I'm trying to make ends meet, whatever that looks like. And that's my reality. I accept that. And I accept that I'm creating goals that fit that reality. I accept that. And I accept that those goals are going to make my weight loss journey longer to get to. However, I'm actually going to be consistent with doing them. And I accept that. Get it? All the acceptance. So let's talk about what radical acceptance is not. And it's radical acceptance really is, it's like, what is it called? Kryptonite is control. So without radical acceptance, we default to control. And control can be things like over restricting food, trying to chase perfectionism in the gym, trying to chase perfectionism in your food, ignoring fatigue, as we talked about, until we burn out. I had someone say the other day, she said, I just don't acknowledge my burnout, or I don't acknowledge my emotions until I'm completely burnt out. And that was such great awareness for her because we as women do that all the time. It's like, I don't get to relax or rest or recover or calm my body until I'm completely wiped. That is not healthy. Again, your body feeling completely wiped is the opposite of how we want it to feel or it should feel. So you've pushed it into this burnt out place solely by not accepting that you are stressed out throughout the day, throughout the year. And you allow that to compound, and then your body burns out. Burns out. Just think of the word burns out. Like you're not a light bulb, right? We don't need to screw a new one of you in. You're the only one you have. So let's stop burning out. Okay, without acceptance, of course, I really like to think of it as everything becomes a crisis. Everything becomes a crisis. And I see this so often. You know what's interesting about this is I know for me as a coach and as a therapist, it's hard when people resist the acceptance. It's hard for me as their coach because I'm like, it's right here. The answer is right here. And they just don't want to look at it. They want to look away. They want to give all the excuses to why the answer is literally there. And they want to avoid it. And it can, I will say, it can be frustrating because it's, like I said, it's such a simple solution, but it really does take swallowing your pride and your ego and your fantasy of what your life or body or whatever it is should look like. And when we don't do that, life is harder. Everything, as I said, becomes a crisis. Every pound, every mood swing, every skipped workout equals failure. And we're not just talking about weight loss here. Everything, everything becomes a crisis or a failure when we can't accept what is. And I think of a lot of my clients going through a hard time, even myself. I'll actually use myself in this because I, over the past year, have had a lot of changes happen. Changes that were really hurtful, changes that are very scary, changes that are very lonely. And I have practiced nothing but radical acceptance. And this does go into my faith because I just trust that all of this is happening for me instead of to me. And I know we talked about this with Andrea Weiss Brown about passion and purpose. But a second part of that is this acceptance of this is what it is. There's what would control possibly bring me here? Nothing, right? So for me, there's already crises happening, true crises happening. The way that I accept it or reject it is only going to allow that crisis to not be as bad or make it 10 times worse. Okay. Without radical acceptance, life is just white knuckling, right? We're white knuckling our way through, we'll say, workouts or a diet instead of training because we have the energy or training around our energy or finding a program that allows us options around our stress level, our schedule, our time that we have, right? Hypervigilance with food and swinging between this restrictive state of I'm super clean, I don't need anything bad, quote unquote bad, and then binging, right? We know through research that the more that you are food obsessed and food restrictive, the more likely you are to hoard food, binge on food, and obsess around food. So this hypervigilance of instead of just acknowledging, I'm going to eat foods that diet culture has told me are bad, but I know that I can have them. And when I have them, I enjoy them. And because I enjoy them and I'm not shitting on myself for them, I don't binge on them, right? The acceptance of I can eat this food. So I'm in a mini cut because I'm doing like bulk cut cycle. and I'll probably do it for the rest of the year. And it's for 4 weeks. And we had my husband's friends in town. You've heard of him. My husband's friend Howie. Absolutely love him and his wife. And we went to Steak 44, which you've also heard about, my absolutely favorite restaurant. And we had a really indulgent meal. Now, that wasn't the problem because I had already planned for that. However, we then went to my coaching friend's pool party at the Valley Ho, which is a hotel here. And that was fine. I didn't eat there. I had a couple non-alcoholic drinks. And then we came home and we had like some snacks when we got home, tracked those, and we decided to go to sushi for dinner. And when I went to sushi, the fucking sushi was so bad, you guys. I am not the person to send stuff back, let alone not eat it at all. And both my husband and I were like, this tastes absolutely terrible. It was so full of imitation crab. Like it was so fishy. It was so gross. And I got home, we had to reassess. But one thing I didn't say, when we were at the sushi place, we did have like some edamame and this like crispy shrimp. And then I had one of each of the sushi rolls to see if maybe it was just one. It wasn't, it was all three of them. So I had to get home and I had to reassess. And I ended up going over that day as well. And my brain, the inner critic, the non-accepting side of things was like, oh my God, you're trying to be in this cut and da 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 da. You're gonna, I knew I wasn't gonna gain weight, but it's just like you're not gonna see the results you want. And then I told myself, I could look, I you know, I planned for the first one. The second one just was sprung on me. When I put the numbers in, it was 100 calories over my 1875. I was at literally 1975 for the week. So 100 calories over each day. That's not going to do that much damage. Now, is my weight loss going to be 1 pound? No, and it might be a third of a pound. Who cares? Right. So it's that acceptance of this is what it is. This is the reality of it. And I'm not going to, cut my meals this week or do anything crazy. We just move on with life. Without radical acceptance, we oftentimes avoid our emotions. And this can lead to like massive anxiety. And when we oftentimes avoid our emotions, we mask it as like discipline or being strong. Or I was listening to something the other day. Oh, I was watching that Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders making the team. And she goes, yeah, I'm the one with like the least amount of emotions in my family. Like she wore that like it was a badge of honor. No, not a badge of honor. Your emotions are a part of being human. And we have to accept that. That is so important to accept. Yesterday, I was full of emotion. All I can call it is that hormonal emotion. And it's so interesting because I remember feeling that way when I was a teenager, going through puberty and now going through perimenopause. It feels so similar. You feel out of control. I wanted to scream yesterday. I wanted to yell at Mark and be like, you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And I need this from you and that from you. I didn't say anything. Now, listen, y'all. I was not an angel. I was very snippy, but that was it. Yay. Because I recognized you're feeling a lot right now. This feels out of control right now. So how can you control it? We're accepting that this is your reality right here, right now. And you're not going to take it out on your husband. You're not going to take it out on yourself. We're going to feel it. We're going to breathe through it. We're going to watch TikTok about dogs and homecomings and go to Costco. That last part probably wasn't a good idea. Another thing is that without radical acceptance, we tend to become like perfectionistic. Remember, control and people pleasing, another controller or protector in our lives. Because if we could do things perfectly, then we don't have to accept any of the hard stuff or the reality of what we're doing. If we can make others see us as good, then we don't have to accept that reality. So I want you to hear that radical acceptance is not like a resignation. It's not giving up your power. It's not giving up your position. It's not letting go of yourself, as a lot of people think it is. It's actually the only place where sustainable change can begin for you. Because again, if we don't accept what is going on and understand it, then we can never change it. So let's get to the good part. Let's get to the good part. All right, steps to building radical acceptance. If you guys are watching this on YouTube and you see me looking down, I set up my iPad right here so that I can look at my notes because I want to make sure I stay on point because y'all know I'll just start talking about dumb shit. Okay, steps to rebuilding radical acceptance. First thing we want to do is pause and notice. Pause and notice, pause and notice, pause and notice. It is incredibly important to recognize when something is off, when something is becomes apparent to you, when you start fighting against something, right? Noticing things like tightness in your chest, noticing things like rushing to want to fix it, noticing things like guilt about letting yourself rest. For me, it was noticing yesterday that I wanted to absolutely scream at my husband for no reason, who literally was like, "Hey, do you want me to make you breakfast?" And I was like, "No." Notice. And for those of you who are noticing weight gain, it's not necessarily noticing the weight gain, it's noticing you starting to talk really negatively about your body, noticing that things that used to be easy for you now are challenging, noticing that you are not as likely to be intimate with your partner, or you're starting to wear clothes that are not clothes you love, but cover you up, right? That is incredibly important to be aware and notice. So just pause and notice the resistance, notice the rush to fix, notice the micromanaging. That's a good one, especially for a perfectionist. So pause and notice. Then what we're going to do next is name the reality without creating a story around it. And this is exactly what I just talked about in regards to my emotion. State what's true. I've gained weight during the past 6 months. Is that true? Not, and I suck, or I'm a piece of shit, or it's so and so's fault. You gained weight. Okay. We've gained weight. That is the truth. Now, the reason behind it, we will understand if it was something due to a medical condition or a medication. Got it. If it's not any of those things, we've probably just eaten in a calorie surplus. Whether that was influenced by hormones or not, whether that was influenced by insulin resistance or not, it's still a calorie surplus. Okay. So I have gained weight over the past 6 months. My emotions have become really strong in the past. For me, I know everyone says this in perimenopause. It really felt like a switch was like, ding! And my emotions were like, bitch, we are going to cause trouble. We are going to make you feel horrible. And I do at times. And it's kind of comical because it's just so reminiscent of being a teenager. And I want to be a teenager. And my adult self is like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Okay. So name the reality without a story. Avoid layering meaning to it, meaning about yourself, meaning about your character, your flaws, your challenges. Avoid layering meaning on it. So don't jump to I'm failing. I should have known better. I wish I would have done this sooner. I am out of control. I can't believe that I'm thinking this way, feeling this way, acting this way, looking this way. Don't layer meaning on it. Just name the reality. I'm just thinking of things beyond the scale and weight loss. My husband and I are fighting more than we have in the past. My work life balance is off. I'm finding myself snippier at my children, right? Those are all facts. Because if someone from the outside looking in could see, oh, you are fighting with your husband more compared to what it was before. You are snippier with your kids more compared to what it was before. You have gained weight compared to what it was before. Now, that's maybe people can't see that, but you know what I mean. So name the reality. Okay. Next, we want to allow and validate emotions. Emotions are not problems to solve. They are messengers. I tell people all the time when I say, oh, yeah, so you were angry about that, so you didn't like it. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, anger is just telling me you don't like something. And in their head, anger is this like monster of an emotion. And it's like, no, it's actually just your body saying, I don't like that. I don't like that you did that to me. Just like guilt is your body saying, like, I did not like what I just did. Whereas shame is like, I don't like who I am. Okay. Now, shame usually is something that's carried from our past, from our upbringing. Could we feel a lot of shame because we've done, you know, who should feel shame about themselves is the person who hit my dog, right? For those of you who are new to this podcast, are like, what? I rescued a dog who was hit by a car. That person did not stop. They did not come back. They did not even want to even see if the dog was okay. Luckily, a neighbor saw that dog and he called the cops. He helped put her into the cop car. The cops took her. They took care of her. And now I have this loving little angel baby named Liberty. That person should feel shame about themselves. Shame on you. Sorry. What was I saying? Oh, emotion. See, this is why I have notes. Emotions are messengers. Accept that. Oh, I'm anxious right now. Why am I anxious right now? I used to get anxiety all the time after drinking, mainly because in my past life, before my healing journey, I was a bitch. I was the mean drunk and I drank way too much. I drank Jack Daniels, ugh, and I was a absolute hot mess. And after my healing journey, I had a lot of scar tissue from that, my own scar tissue of people perceiving me in that way, not ever wanting to be seen that way because I had done this healing. I needed to like prove myself to others. And anytime we'd go out and maybe I drank a little bit more than I wanted to, I would have mad anxiety. Now, for me, I had to allow for that anxiety to be there and then validate the emotions. But also, I had to recognize drinking alcohol is really the problem here. It's not, you didn't do anything wrong, but anytime you're under the influence of alcohol, you feel less in control of yourself and you're not as buttoned up as you usually are and aware. And I'm not saying that buttoned up in a bad way, like in a good way, and cognizant of your thoughts, your say like what you're saying, your actions, right? And so I had to really allow for the anxiety to be there, but also validate how it got there. Now, for you, just allowing the emotion, if you're feeling sadness because you've gained weight, allow it to feel sadness, right? We just let the sadness, we let the grief, we let the frustration be seen and felt without needing to justify it or change it. Again, when we're talking about, I do a lot of internal family systems therapy with my clients. We're talking about protective parts. Our protective parts are the things that we do to try to change the hard stuff, to change the harsh realities, rather than just saying, like, I'm feeling really sad right now. It was so nice. This is a couple weeks ago. And I told Mark, I go, I just feel so off right now. And he asked, well, why? And I said, I think it's just my hormones. And he said, okay, what can I do for you? And that was so important. And I was thinking about this morning, I'm going to sit him down and I'm going to ask him some questions about like what he wants to know about perimenopause and the hormone changes and things like that, because I want to, the more I can teach him, the more he can help me. Right. So moving on. Okay. Next one is choose a regulated response over a reactive response. So again, yesterday, my reactive response was to absolutely just read him to filth, as the kids say. I wanted to just gnaw right into him. He literally did nothing, you guys. He did absolutely nothing wrong. I woke up, I got my iced coffee, I took the dogs for a walk. I was just not in the mood, right? And I wanted to react. But ask yourself, right? Like, what does responding, what does a mature, what does a non-triggered reactive side of me look like? Our activated side of me look like right now? And for me, it was sitting on my hands and just shutting my mouth, not saying anything, It definitely felt like the silent treatment, but it was honestly because the silent treatment was better for me in that moment than speaking. And once we went to Costco and we did a few other things and then we started watching a show we liked and then it kind of fizzled off. It did last longer than I wanted to, but as I am practicing what I preach in regards to cognitive behavioral therapy for like perimenopause, the more that I do it, the stronger it gets, which means that this time in between the acceptance that we're talking about today to the changed behavior or changed thought and thus behavior is going to be shortened as I continue to practice it. So we want to choose a regulated response over reactive control. So can I walk instead of doing the high intensity workout? Can I eat a nourishing meal and not punish myself? Can my husband and I be fighting and I accept his, as we call it, bid for connection, where he puts his hand on my leg? Can I put my hand on his, on his hand and hold his hand, even if we're having a hard time? So that is that. Next, we want to practice this in the body. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a somatic part of this that helps us in grounding ourselves, because when we are not accepting our reality, we are creating a narrative that is full of anxiety, guilt, shame. Our bodies have a physiological response to that. And heightened norepinephrine, cortisol, all of your stress hormones are heightened when we're in this kind of fight or flight mentality. So we want to practice grounding tools like breath work, gentle stretching, body scan meditations. All of my clients have access to these things in your resources tab in the app. It's under self-care and I have it listed. So you have your meditations, you have your practicing skills, and then you have your self-care skills. So there's different types of self-care skills we have in there. So why? We want to be able to get ourselves again in a grounded place out of fight or flight. We want to get to that parasympathetic nervous system, which is grounded, which is resting, which is digesting. And for me, it was a lot of big breaths in and slow breaths out yesterday. And I could feel just this like melting in my body of this really intense feeling. And at one moment, I cried a little bit because my brain did kind of go off on this tangent. And I just brought it back, like let the tears come down. And then I came back to grounding, right? Because what was happening, my brain was not grounding. I accepted that, came back to reality, and just deep inhale, even longer exhale. Okay. The other thing we can do is like touch our bodies with a little bit of compassion. I did this in a session last week with a client, and we were talking about her reality, and she was thinking about something and she had a lot of tension in her chest. So we just had her, sorry, I just hit the microphone. We just had her put her hand on her chest, and I call it like giving your chest a hug, or wherever you're feeling that tension, giving it a little hug by applying a little bit of pressure on it and just breathing with it. So breathe in, little bit of pressure out on that muscle, right? And you can if you're watching on, if you're not watching, so I have my hand on my chest, right? So I can apply a little bit, just a tiniest little bit of pressure on my chest while I'm doing that breath work. Or I can breathe in and then I can kind of do this like circular motion. That in itself is especially helpful with allowing that part of your body that's holding on to that tension, that emotion, that story to relax. Then lastly, we're going to repeat with grace, with all the grace. This isn't a one-time shift. Believe me. It's daily, sometimes hourly, moment to moment practice. And the more, as I just said, the more that I do it, the better that I get at it. The better that I get at it, the less time in between awareness and calming and grounding there is. And that's incredibly important. Our worth should never be determined by how well we pick up on something that is reorganizing our brain and how we move, right? We're trying to move differently. And a lot of people get upset with themselves. I should know this by now. It's like, no, actually, you shouldn't. I talk to you guys all the time about the like conscious awareness of change. So we have unconscious incompetence. That means I don't know there's a problem. Conscious incompetence. I know there's a problem, but don't have any idea how to fix it. Conscious competence. Okay, I know there's a problem and now I'm learning how to fix it, but I have to consciously try. And then we have unconscious competence. It's now my default. That last box, that last quadrant takes a long time to get in. And it requires you to stumble. It requires you to fail. It requires you to have challenges because the more that I learn about my stumbles, my challenges, my fails, the more I can learn from them, change and adapt the way that I'm approaching this thing, and then practice that. And that is so important, especially again, a lot of you are listening. You've been doing these things for a long time. I'm working with a client. I absolutely love her. And we're going to I think we're going to come back to one-to-one coaching because I just noticed that she really struggles with this less than negative, pessimistic mentality. And it just interferes with so many areas of her life. And she was a client that was transferred to me from another coach. And, obviously I have the psychological background. And I was just like, hey, I think that once you can really get a hold of this mindset and how it's affecting your life, all this other stuff will be so easy for you. And she agreed. And I'm really excited to do that work. So again, repeat without grace. So what changes, right? What might life look like, right? I kind of mentioned in the beginning, but what changes with radical acceptance? The body you want isn't built through burnout. It's not built through shame. It's not built through punishment. It's built through balance. It's built through acknowledging what is real. It is not trying to make up stories, and it is focusing on just that, right? Radical acceptance becomes the foundation of your journey. You train with care, not punishment. You eat with nourishment, not to prove discipline. You set boundaries without apologies. You lead yourself with compassion, not control. It will change how you rest. It will change how you move. It'll change how you speak to yourself. It will change how you show up in your careers and your relationships. And it really is a game changer. I am the most accepting person of my reality. And that doesn't mean that because I'll accept something as it is. And my little brain, that little young part of me wants to be like, but she did this or he did that. And my adult part of my brain says, no, 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 no. We're not doing that. This is how it is right now in this moment. And you can continue to keep yourself under this terroristic mentality in your head. That's the only way I think about it, of like, this reality already sucks, but let me make it suck even more by thinking about how much it sucks and how much I suck in the suck. No, 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 no. The reality already kind of sucks, right? Whether that's my dad being really sick, right? My dad is dying of cancer. That is a reality, right? And I can sit here and be guilty. I can be remorseful. I can try to like do too much even to like make up for time. But I'm very accepting that this is what it is and that he's actually doing really well right now. And I accept that reality, and I will accept the reality if that changes. And it's just the easiest way to do it. It really is. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I want to give you a couple things to leave with. Like, ask yourself this: what truth about your health, your life, your career, your relationship are you still resisting? That's number one. Number two, what would change if you accepted it? Not as like defeat, but just as it is. What would change if you just accepted this is what it is? Let me know in the comments if you practice this. I appreciate you guys so much. If you like this style of episode, please comment on it, because I know you guys can get your health and wellness information from a lot of different podcasts. Excuse me. Obviously, I'm doing things a bit differently because I add in the mental health side of things. And I tend to find, and I said this on the All or Nothing podcast, I tend to find that these podcasts do better. So watching it or listening or watching all the way through, commenting on it. Obviously, writing a short review is super helpful. It helps me understand what you want to hear because the next podcast I'm going to do is on like belly fat. So, you know, guide me so I can help you. Other than that, like I said, check out the show notes below for the Mindset of Menopause sign up. Do not miss your opportunity on this. I am so excited. And I'm going to tell you, this is introductory pricing. It is an investment. I'm not going to lie to you. I have set up month-to-month options as well as options to use Affirm and what's the other one called? Klarma. So you can set up your own payments through them. But we also have a payment, a non-interest payment option through the Mindset of Matter as well. So check out the show notes for that. And other than that, I want you to accept this one reality. What you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye bye.